So that was Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Since I recorded the game, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this game is an extremely mixed bag. For every moment that I enjoyed, there were at least two that I didn't. Like the first case was the first case was fine, even though it eventually just devolved into Phoenix saves the day, even though it's not his game. The second case, in my opinion, was the best one that Apollo tackled all on his own. Phoenix did give some guidance, not very helpful guidance, but he still gave guidance nonetheless. But
He's helping.
But Apollo was mostly left to figure it out on his own, and well, with Fruity's help as well. And for the most part, he did it all right, and that was, it was a decent case. Pity about the defendant, though. The third case.
Apollo gets to do it all on his own. Congrats.
And it's the worst case of the game, if not the whole series.
I agree.
Yeah. So yeah, well done. The one time the title character gets to shine, and the case sucks. Well, the second time. And the fourth, in some ways, is better than the third one. I.e., there's actually, it doesn't make me want to tear my hair out because of how stupid it is. But it also does some things worse, mainly because of how it treats returning characters. And since Yamazaki was part of the scenario team, I think it. Oh Christ! It was warning us about his bad habits in his first game.
It is.
Returning characters do come. Returning character comes back, he gets flanderized to like one thing.
Thankfully, he'd grow out of that later.
With Gumshoe being a complete doofus who can barely know how to tie his shoes, and Emma being
Emma wasn't flanderized. Emma got her character upheaved.
Yeah. And Phoenix, well, in the flashback, he was an overly cocky prick who deserved to lose his badge with that attitude, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the game, he was just aloof. Well, not aloof. He didn't care about people, but he was just the typical sensei guy.
He didn't really sound like Phoenix half the time.
You will go to the Dagobah system, Apollo.
Where's Dagobah? As for the other characters, Trucy, in any case except the third one, is fine. The third one's just an annoying helper, like what? Well, not even helper. She's like that one out of that Zelda game, the one with the flying ball, pointing out the obvious to you, barely being of any help whatsoever.
Oh, you mean Ocarina of Time with Kepora Gebora?
I think so, yeah. I don't know much about Zelda. The prosecution, or other than Winston Payne, who, in terms of mainline games, this is sadly his last appearance. He probably just gave up.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, what could he have had to
isn't
lose?
he like almost 70 years old by the time of his game?
Yeah, he probably retired and got fed up and retired. As for Gavin, well, my main criticism of him is that he only has like two facial expressions: overly smug or pissed off. There's no real in between. Seriously, for like 90% of his appearance, he's got that stupid grin on his face. I just want to punch him.
It wouldn't even be so bad, Dwibs, if he earned that shitting grin, but he doesn't.
But in terms of being a prosecutor, in terms of actually doing his job, I think he's a little better than Godo, although that's not really saying a whole lot. And the rest of the characters range from decent, like Eldoon, to unbearable, like Waki, to just being there, like almost everyone else.
Except for Plum, Valent.
I didn't even like Valent either.
Valent is fine, but Plum is just kind of Like,
she's
not bad, she's not good.
Wait,
she's just kind of
Pedro. You liked Plum back then. I think you're thinking of someone else.
I don't know, Jova. In the grand scheme of things, she didn't really make that much of an impression, if you ask me.
Oh well, she wasn't around that much.
Graphically, I think the game's pretty good, and the cutscenes really did. The cutscenes are really improved with being on with the iPhone version, being uncompressed and us being able to see them in more than like 10 frames a second. The sprites are fine and the backgrounds are good. The music is pretty good too. There are some things here and there that I think are a bit meh, and the less said about that god awful song in the third case, the better.
Yeah.
But I really did like the other themes, especially the court one. Granted, it's still the court theme that's the plays when you start the trial, and no patch on the 5th game. But I like the tell the truth theme and the Ace Attorney 1 light theme.
You mean the pursuit theme?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's pretty much like a rearrangement.
Yeah. Put it alongside Pursuit 2001. They sound great together.
All right.
Well, minus the obvious jump-in sound fonts, but whatever.
They're similar enough.
Go ahead.
Okay, so overall, extremely mixed bag, and in terms of mainline games, it didn't even sell that badly, did it?
Oh, no. It was actually the best selling of the mainline ones because of the anticipation going towards it.
Yeah.
And how did that get us?
Believe it or not, the lukewarm reception. Believe it or not, Dwibs, the lukewarm reception wasn't the reason. No, the reason it stopped selling well was because starting with Investigations, Capcom had the stupid idea of not releasing the DS games in, countries other than America and Japan. Gee, what a shock it didn't sell as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Investigation has other issues too. Investigations has other issues, but that is, to me, the main issue. It's like, what did you think was going to happen if you stopped releasing it over in the other countries?
It did get well. The first one did. It's just the others.
No, I mean, Investigations didn't get released anywhere but America and Japan, unlike previous DS games which got released in several countries.
Investigations 1 is in the UK.
Actually, no. Investigations 1 came out in Europe. Sure.
It did?
Yeah. The thing the thing you're thinking is that starting with this game, Apollo Justice, the game stopped being translated in multi-5 European languages.
That's
why
probably
I stopped with the series.
Although, curiously enough, the HD trilogy that's coming out on PS4 and the like is adding those back in.
So
actually, Dwibs, the original trilogy was translated in multi-5, so it makes sense for them to stick with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they already have the localizations done, so they don't really need to do anything.
They just got to use the
copy paste.
Yeah.
But anyway,
And
we're
from
here
what
for
I've
this
seen,
game.
that
So
HD
continue.
trilogy may actually look a bit different, but that's for another time.
So yeah, mixed bag. Although I will say one thing I am happy about is that I got to relieve Jova of the burden. Of this game.
Yeah. And I'll admit, thanks to this, I'm kind of looking forward to doing Investigations potentially, but I've got some other things to record too.
Unfortunately, I probably won't be. As much as I want to, I probably won't be doing any other Ace Attorney games, so I'm stuck with the worst one.
It depends on if you're willing to eventually get a 3DS capture card.
I don't even have a 3DS anymore. So...
Or use Citra.
Well, also remember, Jova, Ace Attorney 5 and 6 also came out on iPhone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah. All right, moving on.
All right, that's me done. Who's Pedro? You go next, since you've been the most vocal.
I would argue Jova probably was the most vocal.
No.
Whatever. I hate it. I'm sorry. I really hate how the game literally basically insults me in case 4 for liking these characters. Like, and the way Phoenix loses his badge is such contrived horse shit. And it's just like, and I don't like the prosecutor because I find him incredibly unintimidating, and I don't find him to be all that good of a character. Even when they do have a chance to flesh him out, like with that back and forth between him and Kristoff, they don't really go anywhere. Well, yeah, that's basically Jova. They don't really go anywhere with it. Like,
oh yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Kristoff is as a villain, like me and Jove have said. Like, he spends most part of the game. Okay, yes, it's true that Von Karma Manfred von Karma, I mean, only came in the last case of the first game. But that character makes a great impression right from the get-go, and we unravel his character throughout the course of the other case anyway. But Kristoff is just a generic bad guy who screwed up who tried to kill people just because of a forgery crime. That's it. That's his motivation. There's no clever motivation. There's no interesting backstory to unravel. No, he's just a common criminal with a suit. That's basically what he is.
The killing actually only started because he wanted to keep people quiet. The later killing came, I guess, because of the... I'm going to go into more of that with my
There's having a more simple villain, and then there's like...
Get the fuck out.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying every single villain has to have this complex backstory, but come on, like, this is the polar opposite of that. I mean, whatever. The point is, yeah, Kristoff sucks. I don't like Clavier either. I hate the storyline. I absolutely hate it. I hate how it basically... This is a game that doesn't even feel like it was made for Ace Attorney. It feels like this game was made by someone that hates Ace Attorney. And because of all the way that the characters are poorly treated and how the story takes a giant shit on the characters that we've grown to love in the original trilogy. It's particularly Phoenix. Like, and I don't... The third case is garbage. And I think that's pretty obvious. Outside of the third case, I do like Trucy, and she'll even have some really great moments in 5 and 6, especially in 6.
Oh yeah, Trucy was in 5.
Well, I did like her role in the final case, Joe, but that was nice, I thought. But anyway, yeah, like, it's just for the most part, the game is just boring and uninteresting, and the pacing, like I've discussed over the course of this game, the pacing in this game is terrible. Like me and Joe have said various times throughout this entire playthrough, the game just talks and talks and just talks and talks, and without getting anywhere close to a point. It just, every single time there's a point to be made, they take like an hour to discuss something that should only take 10 minutes.
What's that? Yes, I think we do need to see the recording of Turnabout Serenade.
No.
What's that?
No.
Yes, we do need to go over how Mr. Latus was feeling cold before he died.
Oh god, I don't understand. It's abundantly clear that the people who made this game weren't invested in making it. It's abundantly clear. I mean, we already talked about the behind-the-scenes trouble with the executive meddling and all that shit, and Keiji Inafune being Keiji Inafune. But yeah, no, it's really, really bad. I mean, I'll give the ending of the crossover this. It was stupid, but at least it was just stupid. This game goes out of its way to make me feel bad for liking Ace Attorney, and that's just why. Why are you doing this to me? Why? I get that you hate the game that you're making, but did you really have to go this far and being full of did you have to go so piece of animus towards me, like Theo said previously in the script?
Can you repeat that?
Animosity, the whole animosity.
Yeah. I'll mention this in my final thoughts as well.
Did you really have to be like that towards me? We're not. Me and Jova are not at fault here, Takumi-san. We're not at fault here. Capcom is. Keiji is.
Don't you see, Pedro?
Don't take it out on us.
But don't you see, Pedro? The future is only depressing and dark and grim, and you only have no hope whatsoever. So that's what we want to see in a video, in a piece of fictional media.
Whatever. I'm not gonna get into that argument because I think that particular trope can be done well if what they're doing. But I'm not want to go into a tangent about it. The point is, this game. It's my least favorite of the entire series. It's my most hated of the series in general. Like I will just because of how much I don't. It's how much it makes me feel bad. Like why? Like it's so terrible. It's badly written. Most of the characters are interesting or annoying, and the music. Okay, the graphics look as great as you usually expect for Ace Attorney. The music is good. However, I don't think it's not really close to being the best Ace Attorney soundtrack. We have plenty of better Ace Attorney soundtracks. I would think it's good, but it's not the best. Aside from that, I can't think of anything else to say. It's just terrible.
Despite the quality, like, do you think these HD for mobile are worse or better than the DS one?
From what I've seen here in the footage, HD version looks pretty fine. I mean, are there any missing animations here, Jova? I didn't notice any.
No. The only things are like, well, the frame rate is a bit wonky on the mouth movements, and sometimes they can look a bit plasticky, but otherwise, nah, this looks fine, you know? This looks more like a cleaned up version.
Yeah, it looks better. This looks better than the HD iOS trilogy, because that looked terrible. No, this looks fine. For what, again, personally, I still would have liked if they would have kept the sprite animations for the mouth, like Jova said, exactly as they were. But this is fine enough. It works fine for what it is. It's fine it's the modern version of this game, and it works fine enough. That's it for me. I'm done.
Drops mic.
Joy?
All right, Dwibs, who wants to go next for you?
Shiri.
All right. Well, that was. I don't hate it. It was just really boring. I can't really think of any moment that stood out that didn't really annoy me. Like the videotape for one. But anyway, the first case was fine, although it is the bigger offender because people harp on turn about sisters, but this is the biggest offender when it comes to a character sidestepping the main character. Like, Apollo barely did anything in that one.
Like, I'll give Turnabout Sisters credit. Sure, Mia had to bail Phoenix out, but that was after Phoenix did everything in his power, and he
Phoenix
pretty much had the case nigh but one.
Trial, whereas Phoenix stepped in to shove Apollo aside pretty early on. The second case was... Which one was the second case?
Turnabout Corner.
Yeah, that was with the Kitaki family, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think the fact that Shiro is having trouble remembering says it all.
I mean, Plum is fun enough. I mean, she'd be pretty low on list of favorite characters, though.
I would, Shiro. I think
in terms of the whole series, I mean,
I think I know what you mean, Shiro. She's kind of like Saz in the original Final Fantasy XIV, in the sense that she's not exactly a noteworthy. She's not a noteworthy character. It's just that everything around her is so bad that she stands out because
I think the problem is more so she's a great character, but she just doesn't get that much time because she's never brought to the witness stand. She's one who's
I'd say it's a bit of both, because I think if she was brought to the witness stand, it would be a similar kind of interaction that we had with who was the temple lady?
Sister Bikini?
Yeah, I think it would be a similar, pretty fun interaction if she was actually on the witness stand.
Yeah.
Waki Kitaki is a thing that exists. That's all I'll say about that.
So what do you know, Teo? Once again, the Saz syndrome, as I like to call it, strikes again. Go ahead, Juri.
Case 3. So case 4.
Smart.
No. Shiro makes a good point. You can literally remove case 3 from the game.
No. It's more like I just don't want to talk about it.
Actually, Pedro, you can't because of the Lamb War.
And you know what's the sad part? I checked TV Tropes the other day just to see if I missed something. Apparently, there is foreshadowing. After the first day of trial, Lamirar talks about Apollo and says, "So it was him after all."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. Never mind then.
Oh, so she did already know that he
was... completely passed over my head.
She wasn't entirely sure, but that did trigger her memory. Eventually, Phoenix pretty much confirmed it.
Oh, wonderful.
Also about, Trucy pretty much telling the player that they were siblings from even, like, the first time she met Apollo. So, yeah. Okay, case 4. The one we just did. Sorry, this game is very bland. I'm sorry.
You were talking about things that piss you off. What about the whole missing diary page bullshit that Clavier used to destroy Phoenix's career?
it's worse than the receipt. I mean-
Yeah. Well, obviously, come
No,
on.
it's not just that. It's because of what it does to Phoenix and such the insult of it. That's what
I mean,
pains
the
me.
receipt was just a moment of absolute dumbness on Phoenix's
Not
part.
only that, besides, on a narrative standpoint, it was just the writer forgetting, to double check this particular point. This one was intentional,
It was mean-spirited as well.
I
but
mean,
go
I
ahead,
get,
Sherry.
I get that Phoenix was a bit of a dick by that point, so he probably deserved to be taken down a peg. But
For no good reason,
not like
though.
not like this. I
Yeah.
know, and he's
Not
pretty,
like this.
he's pretty
Yeah.
inconsistent throughout this game as well. Because on one hand, he's he acts pretty much like the Phoenix we know, and then the next minute he's spouting a lot of philosophical and metaphorical bullshit. And
Or
it's
dad
not
jokes.
very. It's not dad jokes. Actually, I can see Phoenix making dad jokes if he had children. He seems like the type.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that works fine. Like he's kind of like he's supposed to be a goof anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm actually okay with the terrible dad jokes.
Yeah.
I mean, dad jokes are terrible in general, but yeah, I mean, Kristoff was interesting until we actually learned his motivation. That's just really petty.
Yeah.
Like, incredibly petty.
Mm-hmm.
As for Clavier, I still like him more than Godo. Because Godo caused such a mess. And his methods to causing said mess had zero limits. I mean, at worst, Clavier is just kind of incompetent at his job. And at best, he's just, your friendly neighborhood prosecutor, aside for him going out of character occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Although that happened to everyone. Like, Godo was just such an asshole. Like, by the end of it, that...
What an asshole.
Yeah, basically. So, no, I mean, I don't like him much more than Godo, but, like, I still like him, like, enough.
Curious to know, which did you prefer as an opponent and prosecutor?
Godo was probably more dynamic.
Yeah.
But in terms of which one I'd rather see again, Clavier.
Fair enough.
I'd rather just move on to Simon Blackwell.
And we do see him against
Well,
Shirley.
Pedro, you have
I
the
know.
knowledge of hindsight. Me and Shiri don't.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing.
I'm Captain Hindsight, yes.
And that's
Sure.
the thing, as Dwibs brought it up. I mean, you'd think that, because he's not really that significant in Dual Destinies anyway, as far as I'm aware, so I might as well say it, no spoilers, but Clavier, you'd think there'd be some, psychological repercussions for everything that happened in this game. No, not at all. On Clavier's part, he's just kind of the same, and that's what hurts his character the most for me, is that like he is one of the biggest examples of wasted potential in this mess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm
And it
getting
is a real shame.
I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but without spoiling, it is kind of a missed opportunity that he is not the secret prosecutor for the finale case of Dual Destinies. Not going to explain why, because that would be spoiling, but I do notice missed potential there. But more on that later.
I don't know anything about that, so...
And that's
Yeah.
why I'm going
I
to
just
be as
know about his
spoiler-free
writing.
as possible, because I want you to be as surprised as possible.
Okay.
Obviously.
But, the music, I'm not sure if it would be my favorite soundtrack so far. I haven't heard a lot of Spirit of Justice, and I've heard some tracks from Dual Destinies, particularly the rearrangement of the
Objection 2004?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That's a fantastic rearrangement.
It was Iwadare remixing his old tune, because Iwadare did the music for It's Eternity Free, and he returned for 5, so that's kind of, yeah.
Hmm.
It's basically Phoenix's theme song at this point.
Yeah. No, I've seen the cutscene that uses it.
And what Jerry is
But-
totally not playing favorites.
For example, to give you an idea, Shiro, there's even a scene in Dual Destinies where he shows up but not doing and the theme plays. It's basically his theme song at this point.
Hmm. But I would say that this is the most cohesive soundtrack so far
Hmm?
in terms of the full games.
What do you mean?
Cohesive means it all kind of blends in, not in the sense that it sounds the same, but it's its own package. There's a lot of variety in the earlier soundtracks, I think. This one is more of its own little bubble.
I guess,
but I'll still take Ace Attorney 1 soundtrack any day.
Ace Attorney 3 and 1 and 2.
I prefer 1s, but yeah, 3 is also really good.
1 is a fantastic
soundtrack.
Hell
yeah. If we're talking about overall, 1 is probably still the best. Well, more like I have various favorites.
Well, it's the one that has the most iconic themes in it.
Yeah, especially Objection 2001.
And Pursuit 2001 cornered.
Yeah.
Well, I'll agree that the first game has definitely the best soundtrack. 5 is my second. 5 is my second favorite. Yeah, because it has themes.
Same.
Yeah, Enter the Court theme. And there's all the other themes as well that I like.
Athena's theme is awesome.
6 has
I
Phoenix
prefer the 6
Wright's
remix.
6 has Phoenix Wright's Tell the Truth theme.
Well, Dwibs, doesn't that one lean more on atmosphere, which isn't something you particularly care for?
All right. Let's all right, keep going.
Isn't that the case with it though?
You've heard
Mostly,
6's
yeah.
theme?
Okay. No, I mean, I was asking if the reason Dwibs doesn't like it is because it leans more on atmosphere than melodies.
Ladies and gentlemen, our final thoughts have turned into which favorite tracks we have.
So,
Anyway,
but no. Back to this.
Let's
My
get
favorite
back to the
tracks
topic
are.
at hand.
I like the Tell the Truth theme, the Objection theme, the Cornered theme, the second one, I should say.
You mean the second one?
No, never mind. Ignore me. I think it's the Pursuit theme.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, when you say the second Pursuit theme, do you mean the one that shows up when Phoenix does or Apollo's is?
No, the one for Apollo.
Okay, then.
All right, but anyway. The only time I think the sprites look a bit off is in the flashback because, no, they actually did update them for this one. I keep thinking of the original
DS
release.
version.
Never mind. Yeah. Scrap that thought.
I kind of wish I could have shown you guys just how amazingly everything looked out of place during that, but yeah.
See if you can find a screenshot. But I think that's pretty much it from me. It's wow. Again, this was boring. Really boring, and it's pretty easy to see that this would be one of the reasons why they didn't have a game for so long.
That plus what happened with Investigations, but more on that later. And not so much that Investigations
and
was
yes,
bad.
I will agree that we've said it before, but it bears repeating. Turnabout Serenade is worse than Turnabout Big Top.
It is.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
Tio.
that's it.
Boy.
I've actually been looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
Yeah. I was actually wondering, do you want to go last, Tio? Because your thoughts may be better put together than mine.
Well, Trevor, you're usually more. Well, first of all, you're the real fan here, so I might as well.
Fair enough.
I am too, but whatever.
second, Trevor tends to end things more of a positive note. So
Fair enough.
Sure.
All right.
Anyway, this game is just awful. No real sugarcoating it. Like I said, the main central theme here is that it's a joyless story. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of things like Nier, so obviously I should be accustomed to stuff that, it's not pure comedy. But a good game knows how to balance these things out, either with flashy, interesting gameplay, like say, for example, Nier Automata, or the previous, or something else with occasional comedy skits here and there, or even black comedy if the setting is too bleak, for example. This game definition of comedy is some of the cringiest I've ever seen in a visual novel, and coming from a person who usually has a more tolerant taste toward things like Neptunia, that's saying a lot. Like I said, I'm not joking when I say that this really feels like Blues Brothers 2000. It almost has the exact same elements. There are most of the important characters you think you will know what happened, to them after all these years are not here. The one that returns are so depressed. Their lives went nowhere. Their career, their dreams have been crushed. They made stupid mistakes, and now their life is just squander and misery. And the game tells you we should just embrace that and move on, discarding the past like it's a cheap toy. Like, where does this come from? Seriously. Like, I would expect this from a series, but at a gradual decay, okay? Like, to give an example, like a complete example, the Ultima series. The Ultima series, after it peaks in terms of... No, I'm not talking about the quality of the game in general. After the peak of morality with the fourth game, that has a distinct type of narrative that doesn't even have a bad guy, and where it ultimately starts, it's basically a paragon of JRPGs, or RPGs, sorry, in general, in terms of writing a story where there's no villain and everything is hunky-dory, but for a reason. Ever since that, all the subsequent games have been a gradual descent into deconstructing those same values and basically dooming the world of the game itself, with the culmination, obviously, in the last couple of games, also butchered by EA, but it's a topic for another day. This feels incredibly abrupt. We don't know what happened to Maya or the Fake Clan. We don't know what happened to Larry. We barely know what happened to Gumshoe. We don't know what happened to Edgeworth. We don't know what happened to Francisca. We don't know what happened to other minor characters like
Iris!
That too.
Let it go.
Okay,
Joe.
no, that's actually where we're going
that's
for,
the
Joe.
thing,
I'm actually
Joey.
interesting
Okay.
on
I'm
this.
joking, but-
Sorry for debating a bit, Joe, but actually interesting question. Honestly, if you ask me, Iris feels a lot like a self-insert. Hear me out. I wasn't exactly a shipper of Phoenix and Maya, but I honestly felt for the first two games that was the direction the games were going. Come the third one, and the game does its hardest to pin Phoenix into a romance story that functions as a retcon. I always found that a bit weird, if you ask me. But that's a thing tied to trials and tribulation.
I actually do have a small explanation for that. Do you want me to save it for my final thoughts, or do you want me to tell you now?
Sure. Besides, it's just my opinion. I don't want to. I don't have no quarrel with that disagreeing with me.
Oh no. I understand where you're coming from, and I actually do have a bit for that.
Sure. Point. Well, let's go back to the game at hand. Like I said, joyless, like I said, animosity through the entire script. The characters are bitter towards each other. There's a lot of passive aggressiveness towards between everyone, especially during Turnabout Serenade. Even some random abouts of things that come out of nowhere, like, oh, suddenly Clavier is racist against Virginia for no reason.
That was just a joke we made.
Whatever. The point, but let's get into the characters by each one. Phoenix, like I just said, the character of Phoenix is completely destroyed. It's dissected like a piece of like a pig. It's completely dissected. Every single piece is torn apart and reused for a means that it wasn't originally supposed to. And it's not even funny like that. Any fan who actually gave a damn about the character, honestly, has all the rights to feel pissed about it. And his supposed demise in the 4Ks is just, my God. I like I said when he came up, I was seriously expecting him for having a good reason to forge, like having him realizing that he couldn't win the case, but having to know that he needed to do the right thing, so breaking his oath in order to actually, bring justice no matter what. But no.
Oh, he does that in Turnabout Trump, but that's after he's lost his badge.
It's just someone that sets him up because he had his ass blasted just by the fact that Phoenix was chosen instead of him.
Not just that, too. The entire argument for how Clavier manages to get that through is so forced and stupid and makes no sense.
You mean Christopher?
No, Clavier. Remember, Clavier's argument was that, the last picture of the diary was turned off, so clearly this means that there's something afoot. We need to investigate this, even though there could be a million different reasons.
Hold on. With that, I originally thought that Clavier actually was in the whole thing, he was secretly villainous and he had planned the whole thing, but no.
He was sort of.
He was just as well. Yeah, they're brothers. That would have also explained why Clavier had no quarrel with Apollo once Christoph was in jail, because the blame would have been pinned entirely on him, while Clavier would have got away scot-free. You know, that would actually be clever if you ask me.
Actually, now that I think about it.
Let's continue because I want to wrap this up quickly. Apollo is meh. Like, he's a spectator for the most part when it comes to the point of him shining. He's mocked by everyone. Again, Phoenix also was, but he had.
Phoenix had the snark to actually rebound.
Not just that, he managed to have the space to back him up, all of his words. Even with the bluffing meme, Apollo is just the gimmick of managing to have tunnel vision. Whoop-de-doo, thanks for a bracelet. It's an interesting gimmick. Sorry, but it's barely used, and it's not used enough. Like, it's not. Apollo just needed more screen time. There needed to be a fifth case, like another filler, even a filler case in.
You know what's bad when it feels like the character that the game is named after and is the main playable protagonist feels like he needs more screen time.
Gee, it's almost like when Final Fantasy 13-2 had Lightning on the cover.
Although to be fair, Lightning was also a despicable character who people.
No, I'm just talking about character screen time. Apollo, let's up for Apollo. Trucy. Oh man, I get what the game is going for, but so far I'm not convinced. At first. For the first three cases, I so did not care about her. No joke, and it's not like a spiteful thing, because I was genuinely interested. Thankfully, the fourth case is almost entirely also built around her, fleshing her out and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's too late. Like, I wish it's connected to the pacing problems from before. I wish the game had a better pacing here. It's just, man, I so hope she's better in the next games.
She's better in 6.
Yeah.
Clavier is a prosecutor that I have a love-hate relationship with. I firmly believe this behavior in case 3 is dictated by the case itself, twisting all the pre-existing characters, but obviously still not even close, like Edgeworth or Francisca. I'm kind of like Shiro still though. I still regard him miles above better than Godo, at least. Although to me it's a bit better, than Godo. Yeah. His abuse pass with his brother should have been developed a bit more, because this character archetype is actually interesting. A prosecutor that's actually okay with you and actually helps with you.
Well,
but hold on. The other thing that ruins him, sadly, is the limited sprites and facial expressions, because there are a lot of times where he's clearly conveying something through text, but the sprites are saying another thing. That's actually a big problem.
Allow me to remember the whole abused Christopher being an abusive brother thing. That was mostly me and Jova making it up. Not
Believe
so
it or not,
much the game.
Actually, I was the first one suggesting it.
Believe it or not, Tio,
but the game doesn't really. I guess the game hints at it subtly, but
actually,
well, to me, it's kind of enough.
Okay.
It's kind of the same thing that. Oh God, I forgot.
I disagree. If you're gonna bring something up, commit to it and explore it. Don't just hint at this and then leave it as it is. Honestly,
it depends on how much they want it to be the focus and stuff.
But there's a difference between that and deny it exists entirely.
True.
I guess.
Anyway, but while I'm at it, Christoph is the worst main villain of the series, bar, not even arguing. Like I said, I was seriously expecting a legitimate good reason for him to be a dick towards Phoenix and the Grandmaries, but instead he's just a petty bitch. He has a squandered potential in the form of conservative thinking towards the law system.
But it's only brought up at the last.
And yeah, it's literally 2 or 3 lines at the end. And like I said, it's a huge step down for the previous villains, and not a successful starting villain. If you think at this game, like say a new start for everything, this is not a good starting villain either, at all, for this new cycle. For the single cases, I consider case 1 and 4 as a 1, general. Case 2, no. It's the most tolerable, but it's still not enough for me. The characters, I like a bit plum, but not much as I would have hoped for. Every other one is just meh or annoying. Case 3 is completely forgettable. It denies common sense on multiple levels. It tries to justify itself with things that it pulled out of his ass at a convenient moment. Again, a problem of pacing. Oh, turns out that now we're only now establishing that Machi is not actually blind, because fuck you, you know. So completely to discard if it wasn't for Lamirar, which like I said, not realizing that she was actually Thalassa is actually my mistake, like I'm missing point of that. So that was legitimately on me. Case 1 and 4 would be the most interesting because they flesh out most of the core characters, you know. But it's not enough, and like I said, that meta stuff is just what the fuck game. Like I said, it's completely out of nowhere. It's the game experimenting with something new and going absolutely nowhere with it. And apparently it didn't really work because from what I heard, the jury system is practically completely dropped from this point onward.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but that's for the main game itself. And also the minor technical things like you not being able to present anything at the end. You know, that shit irritates me.
That sucks.
As for the technical things, the music is decent. I wouldn't particularly, remember any particular theme, but the general impression is that I'm okay with them. But even the remixes, obviously the Lamirar song for Case 3 tends to be annoying, but if it was just not, played that repeatedly, I would have probably appreciated it a bit more. The sprite quality to me is fine for the most part. There may be some bits here and there that tends to deviate in Canny Valley. For example, when Apollo slams his fist, that is incredibly detailed. You see all those shadows in it. But it's not much. It's not a hassle, honestly. It's just minor technical things. And like I said, I'm one of the people who had not too much of a problem with the HD quality sprites so far in the series. And from what I've seen, the ones for the HD by the time of his recording seems to be actually being tempered a bit,
Yeah, I've seen them. They actually look better.
Have you checked footage of the iOS versions?
The 3DS one, Pedro. I'm talking about that.
I'll have to show you that at some point. But anyway, moving on.
I think that's pretty much it for me. Oh yeah, no, I actually forgot this particular point for Case 4 about Phoenix demise. I honestly feel as if there is some missing, like something missing in this, like a missing episode. Because the shifting behavior with Phoenix would have been believable if we got, for example, a reason for it. Imagine if Phoenix, up until not just before that case, but he was just fresh of a series of not traumatic events, but bad events. Like, for example, Maya leaving again, Larry not talking to him anymore, making him more legitimately bitter and more of a dick, That would justify both characters not returning and Phoenix being a dick, and, just before he lost his badge. It still would have been felt very sour, but at least there would have been a narrative reason behind it. Instead, we just see this shifting tone that just serves to see, oh, look at how Phoenix is arrogant and pride cometh before the fall, brother. No, it's just... no. So that's pretty much it for me. This game is just garbage, but I'm okay. I'm happy that the series will get better from here. I heard a lot of things about the Yamazaki games, but I'm mostly on the optimistic side. But I wanna say this because, keep in mind, I still know practically nothing. I hope there is a good reason for the introduction of the characters of Athena and Simon, because the logical step that I would have thought for new games was instead salvaging these actual characters and giving them more screen time instead of introducing new ones again. But I'll reserve this actual judgment when I will see Dual Destinies at the very least. That's it for me.
So far, a recurring thing of our complaints against this game is wasted potential.
Yeah.
This game bottles it more than Tottenham Hotspur.
Tell me about it.
Jova.
Come on, Jova.
You know, this game is many things, but the thing it is most to me is frustrating. As in the sense of, okay, I don't feel neutral about this game. I definitely do not like it. But what I do feel is like, with how many people do praise this game? Okay, this game went through many different cycles. First off, when it first came out, most people who liked Phoenix didn't like it. Even people who were new to Ace Attorney thought it was fine, but then when they played the original trilogy, well, turns out that was a lot better. Then, after Dual Destinies came out, you know, people love the Dual Destinies universe, then there came this weird period where people were singing Apologistus' praises. And that would later mitigate itself in Ace Attorney 6. Now there are plenty of different reasons this or that, but focusing on Apologistus itself, okay, I mean, there are still some people, but nowadays those people who put this thing on a pedestal are kind of more in the minority again. And you know what? That doesn't mean that they don't matter. What I have wondered is, am I missing something with this game? It's like, I mean, they say that there's a lot of cool stuff here and there, and I see some of it, but it's just not that great. I think now I've started to realize, though, why people may have some of that issue. Let me open my final thoughts with this. Apologistus possibly has some of the biggest potential of any Ace Attorney game up to that point in time. Like, let's think about this. You have the potential of a complete new main character, a possible new gameplay system introduced in it, a new world or whatnot of sorts. I mean, sure, it's fine to bring the judge back, but, you know, that's the judge. But aside from that, Apologistus has so much potential. And I think the people who praise that game or dislike the 3DS games are people who did see a lot of that potential and are kind of sad that the 3DS games don't follow through with all that potential, for better or for worse. So, let's start my final thoughts. This game is definitely the weakest of the mainline Ace Attorney games. It's not necessarily a bad game, but it's a bad Ace Attorney game. Like, no getting around it. It's a pretty bad Ace Attorney game. Now,
considering this is mostly a visual novel, but also putting adventure elements to Jova, if the story doesn't work, then the whole game doesn't work. So honestly, even as a non-Ace Attorney game, I would argue that as a visual novel, this doesn't work either.
Okay. I mean, if you're playing this just for a lawyer simulator, it does its job well. And, you know, there are some parts where I still had fun with it. And, you know, the gameplay is still the tried and true format for the most part. Writing notwithstanding in every parts, but I'm getting to that later. But Apologistus is definitely not really that good an Ace Attorney game. Because an Ace Attorney game, an Ace Attorney game may have it so that the player you're playing as isn't actually the main character of the story. It's been a thing since, like, the first game, where Phoenix actually wasn't pegged as the main character, Miles Edgeworth was. But Phoenix blossomed. He really blossomed and clicked with the players so well to the point where, Justice for All was actually made for a story centering on him and his development. Okay. I think the best way to do this would be to compare Apologistus to the original trilogy. Well, more so the first game, but also how it does take some cues from it here and there. So, let's start off with overall the characters here. Phoenix in the original trilogy was, well, what more can I say? He's Phoenix flipping right. He's had a good 3 years of development, starts off from being a rookie, and while you may raise an eyebrow at how he kind of becomes an ace, it really does feel like the development is gradual enough so that he really does feel massively smart. Special mention goes to Rise from the Ashes, which, even though having to be in the middle, does show that Phoenix has really grown as a lawyer. It's funny I should mention Rise from the Ashes because, Apologistus was kind of made back-to-back with Rise from the Ashes. Things are making quite a bit of sense there considering the shared gameplay and whatnot. It's a shame. Rise from the Ashes actually seemed like a good hint of what could come. As you can tell how Apologistus takes from it some of the investigating mini-games, the ability to look at evidence in all this new way, obviously more better sprites and whatnot. It's a shame that a lot of it kind of crashed and burned. Speaking of which, again, a Phoenix was Phoenix. Apollo, okay. I've heard some people argue that, starting off in the first game, Phoenix wasn't that big a protagonist. I disagree. Phoenix felt like he had presence. Again, there's a reason that a lot of people didn't catch on that Edgeworth was supposed to be the main character until, like, way later down the road. Because Phoenix is just so relatable. Ace Attorney for an Outlander series has a lot of highly relatable and realistic characters. I mean, I really do empathize with Phoenix. And yeah, bias aside, you gotta admit, Phoenix really just has all that going for him. Like, Apollo...
Not to mention, Phoenix is a complete character in a sense that he has a lot of flaws and he falls into things. The bluff meme being a big example.
Yeah. And while it is sort of thing you think they want to fix out, I can see why he doesn't grow out of it, because some habits die hard and that bluffing does occasionally help. God, and you may realize this. I'm having trouble thinking of what to say in Apollo's favor, because Apollo... Well, okay. I will refrain from calling Apollo just Phoenix Light, even though he does take a lot of qualities from Phoenix, but Apollo in this game... He is so disconnected from the main plot when you get down to it. Phoenix was tied into the main plot. His best friend had been mentally warped into an evil prosecutor and was tied into a great sense of tragedy. Sure, Apollo's mother was involved in what would eventually kick off Phoenix losing his badge, but other than that, the connection is Apollo and Trucy are siblings. Like, that's really the main thing. Oh yeah, there's no sugarcoating it. Apollo is essentially an assistant. He's essentially just there to do what Phoenix can't do because he's not a lawyer anymore. And, yeah. Now, as for people who say Apollo was great in this game, I guess some people are considering in that there is sort of an issue with the 3DS games where Apollo does have a bit of weird stuff with the backstory. But honestly, I chalk that up more to this game. There's one thing people don't realize about this game. Whether or not you like or love or hate this game, you gotta admit, it's because of Apollo Justice that we get the massive split between whether or not audiences liked what happened in 3DS games. Because if we hadn't had this stupid split caused by Apollo Justice, which pretty much cut Phoenix, Emma, Mike Meekins, and anyone else who managed to make it over from the original trilogy, it's like they cut them off and isolated them from everything from the original trilogy that we know and love. Except for the judge. But I digress.
Plot twist, Jova, it was actually Dr. Manhattan stealing 7 years of them.
Good gracious. But yeah, again, I have trouble thinking of what to say for Apollo, because in this game, Apollo doesn't have much character. Heck, I even talked about how Apollo's not as trusting as people. That has more to do with the running theme with the defendants, more than it has to do with Apollo himself. But I guess to be fair, Dual Destinies... Actually, no, that's cheating. Dual Destinies is the one that emphasizes on that. Never mind. He
has a cool bracelet.
He's sheepish? No, Phoenix was also sheepish. Okay, he has some interesting character showings in the first Turnabout Trump, where he shows, how he's a big fan of Phoenix Wright, how he chooses to side with Phoenix over his mentor and whatnot, how he's really angry when it turns out Phoenix did use Force evidence to catch Kristoff. That's nice. We never really get to see more of that, though, later on. So yeah, that's Apollo. I'll go more to him later when I talk about the cases. Trucy. Okay. Trucy is in... Now, I'm not going to call Trucy the Varric of this, because she still has some problems that keep her from being that interesting. Trucy is a good idea for the most part. Trucy starts off being keen in Turnabout Corner, because, I'll be quite honest, in Turnabout Corner, it feels like Trucy was actually the one calling the shots more than Apollo was during that case. Trucy and Clavier, in terms of actually catching the bad guy, and Apollo was just playing catch-up. Like, Trucy has a lot of interesting ideas. It's also keen how helpful she is, even actually managing to get the trial stalled by faking her own kidnapping using Mr. Hat. So she's keen in there. And then Turnabout Serenade pretty much throws that away. I mean, she's a fangirl of Clavier. She doesn't even really do much stuff that helps out. Valent is a better help, and I don't mean that as a mark against Valent. It's just, dang, Trucy, come on. Turnabout Succession, she goes back to being fine enough and helpful enough, but Turnabout Succession is, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Turnabout Succession is like the grandma stretch in how anticlimactic you can make a case. Back to that later. Clavier. Clavier has wasted potential, the character. Like, okay, I can get what they were trying to do with him. Make him a more carefree prosecutor, one who for once didn't have this long-seeking grudge in some way, shape, or form. That's fine. The problem is that, while in trying to stay true to that, they constantly have to have him avoid any bouts of mental trauma that would add on to his character. Now, Turnabout Corner is fine enough for establishing him, but then Turnabout Serenade comes in, where his friend Darien, his friend and a fellow detective, his friend Darien is found accused of murder, and while he does wig out here and there every once in a while, by the end when Darien is caught, he's just like, it's been good times, I'm back to smiling and whatnot, which is then later emphasized in Turnabout Succession, where it deals with his flipping brother. And it's one of the few times, near the end, when he does have a different sprite. Where was that? And why did it take so long? And yeah, fans of Clavier, I definitely get. Clavier does have a lot of good potential. In some ways, I like him better than Godo. For me, it's a mixed match. As in terms of being an enemy to face, I'm sorry, Godo still gets that, because Godo was satisfying as all fudge to take down. Clavier just takes away that satisfaction every time. And not in a good way. And in terms of being a character, God, I'm going to have to give this to Godo. Don't get me wrong. As a prosecutor, Clavier is better at doing his job, but as a character, Godo feels more like the full picture here. Yeah, and you know what? You don't even have to like Godo because he still gets his comeuppance, thrown in jail and whatnot. Whereas with Clavier, there are some dang implications here that Clavier may have done some illegal stuff, but he's not going to get marked against it. But I'll get more to that when I talk about these cases as their own self.
For as much as you, allow me to add that, Chova, for as much as you might not like Godo, think of it like this. At the very least, we actually got to fucking unravel his character. We still have barely touched upon Clavier as a character, really.
I mean, we pretty much unraveled that he spends every night having a nightmare thinking that he may have done something wrong, which it turns out, yeah, he did, but that's solved now.
Go ahead, moving on.
Anyway, and let's move on to our detective for this game, Emma Skye. First off, I gotta say, okay, changing the character can be a thing. I mean, it is nice to see that the old Emma is still in there, but Ace Attorney 6 did it better. Going aside from just Ace Attorney 6 did it better because, well, might as well wait for Spirit of Justice to explain more on that. Here, it's nice that they make Emma a frustrated woman and, you know what? No, she was never even a Maya clone back then. Like, I mean, I get that it's part of the running theme of how this is a gloomy, more deep, dark environment. She didn't get the job she wanted. The problem is that nobody ever really explains why she can't just take the test again, and, well, you probably know the big elephant in the room regarding that. But yeah, why can't she just take the test again? And, okay, her acting snarky is fine. She does get a lot of funny moments, she's not the worst. But I'll admit, the first time I played it, I just did not like it. Replaying it, I definitely get some entertainment value out of it. Though then again, that may just me being happier because I've seen Ace Attorney 6, god dang it. I mean, Emma is mopey. Like, and not in, like, the keen way. Like, yeah, Gumshoe could mope a bit, but to be fair, Gumshoe legit had his whole salary thing, so that alone gives him all the more reason to mope here and there. Notice how...
Besides, Gumshoe actually had still an optimistic kind of way at the end. He was saying, oh yeah, they cut my job, but he still can do something, Emma is like, oh, my life sucks.
Like, here's the thing, and that's the thing. Gumshoe, over the course of the first Ace Attorney game, he had an arc where he grew to like you and trust you more. In fact, Rise from the Ashes added on great to that. Emma... It doesn't feel like she gradually grows to like you. It just feels more like she sees you as almost a rival herself. I mean, it's nice that she still thinks highly of Phoenix. It makes sense. Though, the weird thing is how she tends to act. Like, and for reference sake, in Turnabout Goodbyes, Gumshoe is there to celebrate. Gumshoe helps out a lot as much as he can. Emma doesn't really seem to help out that much. And okay, yeah, she technically doesn't have as much at stake connected to it as much as Gumshoe did. It just... I don't know, it feels like, why'd you even bother bringing this character back if there was little disconnect? Like, Why not just have a new detective or something? You know, like Darian. Yeah, I'm gonna get a bit ahead of myself, but let's talk about Darian. I see Darian as way wasted potential. Like, Darian to me, and to a lot of us when he was on screen, before he's ousted as the killer, Darian seemed like the idea of Clavier done better. Like, sure, he's a musician, but Darian actually, you know, seemed to care more about his job and being professional when the time came. Also, it was nice that he snarked at Clavier when he deserted. Darian, like Luke Atme, was such a wasted potential. Although, to be fair, in the case of Luke Atme, at least Luke Atme could say he was a great villain because of it, so it was more okay to see him go. Darian, I think, is better as a character rather than the killer. Like, him being part of the smuggling thing kinda feels like it came the fudge out of nowhere. It's just because, Lambware recognizes his voice. Like, it feels so abrupt here and there, and it's a shame because I liked Darian up until that point. Yeah, I know his hairdo is iffy, but aside from that, he's more of a competent character than Clavier, I'd argue. Well, to that point anyway. Anyway, that's the main cast. Yeah, okay, I think I covered pretty much all. All right, Phoenix himself. Okay, you know, I've been asking around, and I think I've curated a good reason why people praise the idea of Phoenix. Like, you know, this game as a whole, I noticed one thing. Unlike almost any other Ace Attorney game, whenever fans praise this game, it feels more like they praise the ideas as opposed to the execution. Like, I've never really heard Apollo Justice praised as a whole. And I think Phoenix, or Hobo Phoenix as some call him, is a really good example why. Okay, he is clearly part of one of the executive mandates. If it weren't a returning character like Phoenix Wright, like, almost 50% of the problems with this plot would have been handled better. Like, in fact, shove any old attorney in there, it could have worked. But you know what, fine. Shutakumi was executively mandated to include Phoenix in here, and after seeing the credits, I'm beginning to wonder how much involvement Shutakumi had outside of just the base story. Heck, some of the cases even. But I'll get to that later. Yeah, so Shutakumi had two main executive mandates. Get Phoenix right in there, and then make a story that would, of course, reflect how Japan was getting better with the law system at the time. That, in and of itself, was Turnabout Succession. Phoenix feels like a weird ploy by Capcom to try and throw the fans a bone. I mean, okay, we could argue on and on about whether or not they want to make a game without Phoenix, but Phoenix's role in this game has a double-edged sword of problems. Sure, it's nice to see Phoenix back, but look at the role he's in. And sure, you could argue, well, they're hinting that he may get his attorney's badge back. Hate to say it to you guys, but back then, people didn't know whether or not Phoenix was actually going to get back into the game after all that time. It was only until Dual Destinies that got confirmed. And Dual Destinies was 5 years after this game, god dang. 6 if you count Japan's release date. The problem with Phoenix's role is like, okay, Phoenix's role is not really going to satisfy most people. Like, his role is not that big, technically, while also being the most important thing, technically. Let me explain. He has a smaller mitigated role in the sense that he's like that wise old mentor who fell from grace here and there. How he lost it, I hate that with a burning passion. Phoenix, though, when he's Hobo Phoenix, he does have some showings of old Phoenix in there. And you know what? I wouldn't mind it if it weren't for the fact that they kind of make him a dick at some points to the point where it doesn't feel earned. It's my same issue with stuff like Legend of Korra or Last Jedi with Luke. It's like, just because you can change characters and you think it's interesting doesn't always mean you should. Because, yeah, congrats, you made Phoenix lose his job, the thing he's been working for most of his life, to the point where he's been a piano player more than he's been a lawyer. What interesting things came out of it? Well, Phoenix is a lot smarter and more aloof. Yeah, here's the thing. I get why Phoenix is a lot smarter here. He had time to prepare. Also, his badge isn't exactly on the line because he's already lost it too. His role is too small for a lot of Phoenix Wright fans to be sufficed. The problem is that his role is also at the forefront to the point where he pretty much overshadows Apollo as a character. Like, okay, look. Turnabout Trump. could have been a good showing. I actually do like Turnabout Trump for the most part, some things aside, and that's mainly because of how Turnabout Succession doesn't properly build off of stuff. But Turnabout Trump could have been a good starting, you know? I mean, okay, Apollo having a weird wonky first trial where he has to be helped out, you know what? Fine enough. It's a unique enough first case, and one that actually works out rather well, with lots of plots, twists, and turns. So, after that, Phoenix literally says, it's your story from here on, Apollo. Problem is, Turnabout Succession. Like, oh boy, Turnabout Succession. And, I don't know. I kind of hate it because I don't even really like Phoenix here as much as I did in previous ones. And that's not all his fault. Like, I can get him acting a bit more like this or that because of all the terrible stuff that happened to him. It's just, man, there are points where this does not feel like Phoenix. And not in the sense where, oh, he's aged by it. It's just, no, this isn't Phoenix. Who are you? Thankfully, though, he has enough parts where he does sound like Phoenix, where I can see why people would like Hobo Nick, you know? I mean, okay, he is actually pretty rather clever and smart, and in some ways he does feel like an evolution of Phoenix's character. The problem is the character upheaval that gets him to there. There are times when he gets a little... Okay, he had 7 years to plan most of this stuff. My issue is when he becomes pretty much a god in court to the point where... Dude, how have you not been able to manipulate the law system to get you back as a lawyer at this point? Oh wait, I guess he technically kind of does. It just feels like, you know... Why couldn't the story have just been about Phoenix getting his badge back? And I guess technically it is, but again, we didn't know that until Dual Destinies. That's the problem with this game. There's so many uncertainties, and not in the good way. Like, Turnabout, okay, the first Ace Attorney game had a lot of uncertainties of what was to come next when it originally came out, but it did at least in a way that made you feel satisfied, like you accomplished great things. Here, sure, you got to play as Phoenix, so technically you can say you did all this, but essentially for the most part you were playing as Apollo, who was, he was the lawyer for this job, this Mission Impossible court legal job. Okay, so, Phoenix overall, yeah, while I do get the good things, I'm still glad that we got him back as a lawyer, and I honestly think that he's much better in those. He still has his quirks here and there or whatnot, but I will gladly take lawyer Phoenix back over... Well, over Phoenix and Turnabout Succession. That's the absolute worst. Alright. Now it's time to actually talk about this. Turnabout Trump, I already talked about a lot of the good points here and there. Turnabout Trump is a great start to this game. You know, we're led in. We see things in quite a vastly different way. And it's actually quite masterful. Your mentor turning out to be the killer. Here's the problem. The more I go back to this game, the more I think a lot of elements in Turnabout Trump should have been swapped with elements that we learned in Turnabout Succession for better build-up. Yeah, it's creative, I guess, that our villain is someone who's already in jail, but that takes away from a lot of stuff. Like, god dang. Now, the mentor being the killer is a neat twist here and there, but again, wouldn't it have been better if we'd saved that for later, actually? I guess Phoenix wouldn't have been able to be the mentor there, but god, this plot is a mess. So yeah, Turnabout Trump. Great, but could have been much better if the story as a whole was better. Moving on to Turnabout Corner. Turnabout Corner has quite possibly some of the most frustrating bits for me in the sense where this is a case that feels like it should be fantastic, has the ingredients to be fantastic, has the cues to be fantastic, literally has some of the characters to be fantastic, but it's not fantastic. In fact, sometimes it can feel awfully boring. Like, okay, the cool thing is that how it starts off with 3 different incidents that feel unconnected, but all eventually end up connected, like completely random stuff, like a panty snatching, Phoenix getting hit by a car, Guy Eldoon's noodle stand being stolen, all compiling into a murder. And the way that that's solved is actually pretty neat and sweet. And the characters do show some bouts of fun and fluidity. Shame Plum, who... You know what's funny? Plum seems to be the one we remember the best, even though she kind of shows up the least out of these characters.
She's not even in court. So,
I mean,
yeah.
Plum just screams potential. I mean, sure, her husband, Winifred, is neat and all. You know, obviously the whole Godfather thing going for him. And he's nice. It's the defendant, though. Oh, walkie. Look. Just, at the very least, you could have had him shape up. Apparently he does that off screen. Waki is just annoying. And you can have characters that in story are annoying but also be compelling. Like, look at Ron Delight. Ron Delight was a character who annoyed a lot of characters in story, but on the inside, Ron Delight was an actual rather compelling character. He acted cowardly, but he could show bouts of bravery. He did stuff for the one he loved, his wife, Desi, who he really did love a lot, and he actually did try to do the courageous things and the right thing when the time came. Admittedly, he was selfish here and there, and obviously he doesn't get completely scot-free. Except for the double jeopardy thing, but whatever. And hey, we later learn that he goes on to be a superhero. That's flipping awesome. The point being is, like, well, Waki Kataki to me feels like Ron Delight done badly, and that's gonna be a complaint you're hearing from me a lot. Apollo Justice feels like stuff done from the original trilogy, but done badly. I'm saving Kristoff for later, and that thing for particular. So, yeah, Turnabout Corner. Oh yeah, the villain is weird. Okay, the villain has an interesting idea. Hire Apollo thinking that he's pretty much a hack attorney who would get Waki committed for guilty. That's an interesting idea. Why she shows up later to try and do the job? Okay, fair enough. I mean, I guess she's trying to get the job done herself, so fine enough. It's just, there's a point where the bad guy kind of loses all sense of survivability. Like, okay, so you wanted to do all this to avoid getting on the Kataki family's bad side. And now you're pretty much dissing your fiancé in court where they can probably hear you. Survival instincts kind of went down there for a bit. That aside, Turnabout Corner is fine. It's frustrating about how good it could have been. It could have been an amazing second case. Turnabout Serenade! Turnabout Serenade takes any chances it has, throws it on the sidewalk, kicks it into a bloody hole, takes out a magnum, shoots it like Jill did to Nemesis, then does the whole thing over again 10 times, puts it into a rocket, shoots it into atmosphere, and then launches it off with Pluto's hopes of ever being considered a planet. God dang you, scientific group. It is definitely within the mainline Ace Attorney games a contender for the worst case. Probably is the worst case in the mainline Ace Attorney games. It is just... I mean, and the sad thing is that it's the case where, when I first played this game, I had the most fun with. Why? Because, honestly, if you ask me, Turnabout Serenade is like the only case where Apollo gets to truly shine for himself. Like, honestly, again, Turnabout Trump, more like Phoenix's show, fair enough. Turnabout Corner, more like Trish's show. I'm beginning to wonder why she's not the attorney instead. Turnabout Serenade is finally where Apollo gets to do it. Like, he gets to take the jabs at Clavier that actually stick. He makes the deductions that make sense. He shows his prowess as a lawyer, his determination, his mental sturdiness, thinking for himself more so. I mean, and the advice that Phoenix gives to him doesn't even overshadow the work he does. Like, Phoenix feels like a good enough mentor in this one. It's just the case itself. Okay, the first half is some of the worst pacing I have ever seen in Ace Attorney. Like, really, really badly. I don't know who is responsible for this pacing, but they really need to think about what they've done. Which is a shame, because unlike the original trilogy, there's so much more people involved with this game that it's hard to pinpoint who's at fault for what here and there, especially with there being several different writers on board. This case, though, Turnabout Serenade, it also has quite possibly the biggest chance for Clavier's character development to start. The problem is that the story is so fixated on having him be the good guy, the smiler, the one who's above all the influence and all that, to the point where he acts like he has determination to stop you when his buddy is under accusation. And then he just is like, when Darian is finally out, he's like, on my air guitar. Yeah, sorry, Darian. It's been good times, but you gots to go. And you could say maybe he's housing inner mental pressure. We never get to see that inner mental pressure ever pay off. So, yeah. Oh, and that's saying nothing about the whole blind business. Like, screw that with a rusty spatula. I mean, okay.
Just turn a blind eye to it, it's fine.
Machi Tabai is a better character than Waki. It's fine enough. And I will say this. The interesting thing with the defendants all having definitely something shady to go with them, not murder, but something shady, that's an interesting thing, and it does play into why Apollo's not as trustworthy. In some ways, I guess you could consider this kind of a foreshadowing of the dark age of the law, so that's a theme I can actually appreciate with the more gloomier environment and whatnot. And Machi Tabai is... he's harmless at worst, and I'd say a decent character at best. Lamor is an interesting case. Well, Lamor, aka Talassa, is an interesting case in many ways. She's fun to play as, I'll give her that, and her amnesia thing is kind of interesting. I think the issue is that it feels like the writers at times kind of lose track of stuff with her during Turnabout Serenade. And, yeah, I've already talked about how Darian should have been the main detective. He's more entertaining than Emma. He has better jokes than Emma. Sure, he's kind of a dick, but honestly, for the most part, it seems like he's mainly about doing his job. Then the second half of the case comes, and while he doesn't completely lose character, it feels weaker. It really does feel weaker. Like, holy cow. Look, Acro of Turnabout Big Top has definitely a lot of divisive stuff, but at the very least, one thing that's kept consistent between both the anime and the video games, which was good about Acro, was how Acro felt for the most part solid. I guess to be fair, he had the benefit of only showing up in the second half, but Acro felt like more of a compelling villain to take down. He was more kind in a sense, obviously, but you could still see how he could be capable of murder. Darian just feels like at the last minute they thought, hey, were we supposed to have Darian be the killer, or were we supposed to actually have the twist be that we were trying to prove that the killer was actually blind? Because, as I stated with Turnabout Serenade, the main issue is that Turnabout Serenade from the first half feels like a case where you are the prosecution, and the prosecution is trying to prove the outlandish claims. Because you're telling me that not only a little kid who's blind, who has no known training whatsoever, someone was able to fire this huge arm cannon of a gun and kill a man. I mean, look, that feels like something we would be trying to prove because of how hard it is to prove.
They're really, underestimating the intelligence of their audience with this one.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just baffles my mind. It feels so backwards. Like, literally, if they had swiveled it around, then it would have been more interesting to see how we'd prove such a thing, like if Machi actually was the killer, but nope. And that's Turnabout Serenade. That's all she wrote. Which brings me to Turnabout Succession. Turnabout Succession is not the worst finale to me, ever. But it's the second worst finale to me in anything Ace Attorney related, because I'll be quite honest, Turnabout Succession is the most anticlimactic finale case in anything Ace Attorney related, which is a cardinal sin. It's really a sin. The only reason that I dislike any other finale over it is because that finale just made the entire game feel worthless up to that point. This one doesn't do that, but for the build-up they, at the last minute, put in for Kristoff, for all the suffering that Kristoff has caused, we barely actually get to touch the guy, honestly. Like, let's put it like this. Kristoff was pretty much doomed to lose the moment he went on the witness stand because, I hate to say it, the jury system kind of makes this stuff easier. I mean, yes, this is how it's supposed to be in real life. But, yeah, it kind of does show how it may not make the gameplay as interesting or as intense or as stake-heavy. It's still my headcanon that the jury system is around, we just don't get court cases that involve it, which can be a case in real life, Not every court is going to be done by a jury, not every court is going to be done by a judge. Granted, juries are the norm, but whatever, I digress. Turnabout Succession is a culmination of a lot of good ideas, some of which are executed good. The problem is that overall, the pacing is at its absolute worst here. Yeah, Turnabout Serenade has its own issues here and there, but Turnabout Succession is where they really do not prioritize how well pacing should be for certain things. Okay, the first investigation point is your typical let's build up thing. The problem is that from the very start of it, the stakes don't feel that high. Obviously, there's something in secret going on, but even by the end of it, the stakes don't feel that high. Like, let's honestly look at the stakes of Turnabout Succession. Testing out a new system of the court. Okay, why do we need to worry if it doesn't go through, though? I mean, yes, we want it so that the court system gets better, but I'm gonna be quite honest, this feels like something that would have been worked for better in Dual Destinies, because Dual Destinies is actually the one that focuses on that. That's not to say Apollo Justice didn't do it, and mind you, without constantly saying the word over and over again, but it does feel a bit askew at times. The problem is that the jury overall doesn't feel like something we should care about as much. We normally care more about the characters. Well, let's look at that. Okay, Vera turns out to be a character that they actually do manage to flesh out well enough. Albeit, some of it's while playing as Phoenix. But Vera is a character that I'm going to say they earned well enough. Same with Drew Misham. The Mishams are fine. It's ironic. It's actually a nice subversion how the Mishams who are actually behind the forgery that lost Phoenix's badge are some of the best friends he has afterwards. It's really a messed up world. Really messed up. And then, though, okay, so they're fine. Who else do we have? Sparkbrusher. Okay, he's a fine enough character, too. In fact, most of the characters here are fine enough. Here's the problem. The story don't really care about much about them by the time the end comes. Again, let's compare this to the finale cases of, well, okay, any of the free Ace Attorney games. In the finale cases, the cast you had was there with you from the beginning to the end, except for those who were put in jail, obviously. Like, again, Turnabout Goodbyes I've already talked about. Justice for All, of course, you got plenty of people there. Even the ones who don't show up in court show up at the end. And, of course, Bridge to the Turnabout, which is the culmination of the series, so, yeah, of course. This one, though, by the end, it's really just Apollo and Trusty celebrating with Vera. Sparkbrusher doesn't really show up afterwards. Valiant doesn't show up afterwards. It's kind of empty feeling. Like, does anyone else just feel empty after this game is done?
Yes.
Me.
Dwibs?
What? Oh. Yeah.
Dio?
Like I said, I was expecting even from Brushel to be more important in this story, but no, he's just there.
It's funny. In a way, they reflect my main issue with Turnabout Trump. Turnabout Trump built up some details, like Shady Smith doing this or that, and you think, oh, this guy may have seemed like a jerk, but he actually had a secret reason for doing all this when we later find out he's coming back for this. Nope, he was just a jerk who wanted to make Phoenix lose his job because, okay, he's mad at Phoenix for losing at poker, even though poker was how he decided who he wanted his lawyer to be, so what is even the logic here? There is none. Well, there's some logic here, but god dang it. It confuddles the mind. Back to that, anyway. The problem... Yeah, okay, so the stakes are with Vera, fine. The issue is that we only start caring for her after she's in trouble of dying. Like, yeah, I care for her more after the flashback stuff with Phoenix, because by then her character feels more complete. Usually what original trilogy games do, though, is that we care so much about the characters, well, filler defendants aside, we care a lot about the main characters who are in trouble, because we know enough about them when the trouble fully hits. That, or we get some idea of what transgressions they're going through, or what's affecting them or whatnot. So... And when it comes to the other characters, like Sparkbrusher or Valiant, yeah, they have good stuff going for them. The problem is that they don't really get their stuff to shine in the end, because, yeah, in a lot of ways, the investigation and court trial scenes don't feel as well connected. Like, honestly, by the time that we get to the first trial phase of Turnabout Succession, even the characters aren't really treating this seriously. Like, everyone's constantly going, this is just a test, no biggie or whatnot. It's like the game actively doesn't want you to care, and that just feels plain dang weird. Again, the concepts are interesting. A lot of these ideas are interesting. The problem is the execution is weak. Speaking of which, Christoph Gavin. He is officially the weakest main villain in... he's even the weakest... He's the weakest main Ace Attorney villain in anything Ace Attorney related. Like... Yeah, I said it. He's even worse than the Storyteller. Like, don't get me wrong, the Storyteller has loads of problems. And comes off as a dick. But the Storyteller at least had, as I said with Manfred von Karma, presence. Christoph Gavin lacks presence.
And it was actually fleshed out.
Exactly. Well, that's sort of what I meant, but yeah. It's like Christoph Gavin. Okay, Christoph Gavin is like, he's an interesting twist villain for the first case, but for the most part, that's just what he mainly is, a twist villain. And first cases aren't always the heaviest, of course, but it becomes clear, I view him as Dahlia Hawthorne light. Like, seriously, like Dahlia. He befriends Phoenix, obviously not the girlfriend-boyfriend thing, but, he's someone Phoenix trusts up until, the events of the first case or whatnot. So here's my one question. Clavier, you've had suspicions. How was Clavier not suspicious that the same man that Christoph told him was a fraud, Christoph himself defended at the legal council of attorneys and actually befriended Phoenix for those 7 years? The same man he told Clavier was a fraud. That never struck Clavier as suspicious?
Nope.
I already listed off several other plot holes in this, and Ace Attorney is no stranger to plot holes, but they're never this blatant, and mostly they can be wrought off as heat of the moment, or person didn't think this through, or of course it's a plot hole because it's a contradiction, which the attorney is supposed to point out. Not so much here. It really does feel like the whole thing that leads to Phoenix having his badge taken away is so contrived. Like, Zack chooses his attorneys based off of how well they play poker. Christoph loses to him, so he fires him. Phoenix wins, so he hires him. That's a thing, I guess. And even still, why did it even matter? Because he was planning to escape, because he didn't want Valent, the guy who actually turns out got him accused of it, he didn't want Valent to take the fall, even though that kind of does lead to Valent being suspected, but I digress here and there. It's just such a contrived and terrible mess. It really does feel like they go out of their way just to make it so that Phoenix has to have pride before the fall, because, okay, Hobo Phoenix may be okay at worst. Well, no, Hobo Phoenix is annoying at worst, but Hobo Phoenix may not be the worst, but Phoenix Wright during Turnabout Succession's trial phase is some of the worst defacing of a character and their arc. This is where I bring up the thing about Iris, Tio. It's like, yes, okay, I get it. Stuff like Iris felt like last minute. But the thing is like, well, it still felt earned over the course of Trials and Tribulations. That is the major problem with this game. This game craps on what Trials and Tribulations accomplished. Phoenix had finally become an Ace Attorney? Well, believe it or not, Turnabout Succession literally happens like a month or weeks after the events of Bridge to the Turnabout. Which means that, yeah, Phoenix finally gets Mia's blessings as an Ace Attorney. Loses the badge not even too long ago. It's like they're making fun of him. Phoenix finally found a love life. Well, we have not heard about that love life, and it's something that continues to frustrate me. Like, you don't even have to make her the canon shipping of Phoenix, but when you make such a big deal about how Iris was, it makes no sense that he has no mention of her whatsoever. The woman who he loved back then, and as the credits do tell us, apparently still loves her, considering how he was willing to get smacked by Pearl, even though he kept visiting her with those lovey-dovey eyes and whatnot. And yeah, I'm an Iris fan, so I'm a bit annoyed by that. This game is what started that trend, and it's not just Iris. Okay, so you're telling me Maya. Okay, to be fair, we're told that Maya has kept in touch with Phoenix, sending him videos, but never any word about how Maya reacted to Phoenix losing his badge. And speaking of losing his badge, how about Miles flipping Edgeworth, the guy who Phoenix got his badge to save in the first place? Not a word from him. We got a word from his lackey. There's also the bit where Damon Gant literally said that there was a trial, the opening of a new era. Why did they feel the need to drag Phoenix's name through the mud? You could have had Phoenix in this and just have him be Apollo's mentor from the start. Or heck, you could have had Phoenix be a lawyer and have him eventually point out that, hey, Kristoff's actually the killer, and Apollo would have gone to join him here. And yeah, you could have had him aged and a bit more wise and whatnot. Taking away his badge just feels like they really wanted to experiment. And then they're just left regretting it because, oh boy, ever since this game, it's like they've gone out of their way to erase any mentioning of Hobo Phoenix. Well, not so much in Dual Destinies, but I digress. Yeah, but it's just the disconnect here. Like, whether or not they were planning to make Iris his love interest, and it seems like they pretty much were, here's the thing. Trials and Tribulations was meant to be the end of Phoenix's journey and whatnot. I'm glad we got Phoenix back, but it's clear Trials and Tribulations was supposed to be the end of stuff. They had to drag Phoenix back in, though. It's like, end with Trials and Tribulations. Whether or not Phoenix won with Iris is up to you, but it does feel like he had earned happiness that he had been looking for. Maya will finally accept her role as the master of the spirit channeling technique. Edgeworth will have finally come full circle. Franziska will have gotten better, though she still hasn't given Phoenix that damn card back. God dang it. Gumshoe gets to be successful, and, he finds love with Maggie or whatnot. Again, people get to be happy or whatnot. Nice, like the end of Return from the Jedi. Why do you have to ruin it later on? It's just... The disconnect and just bringing this stuff back to be torn apart and desecrated. I can get why people may like this in hindsight, but thing is, it's only considered a good stepping stone in Phoenix's character because Dual Destinies managed to salvage things and say he grew out of it. So retroactively, yeah, this is an interesting time where Phoenix is at his lowest point. But when this game first came out, well, there's a reason Phoenix is back as a lawyer. So, to wrap up things for Turnabout Succession, Christoph Gavin is wasted potential as a villain here. All they would have had to do was give him more presence. The thing is, it's only until the second phase of investigation in this trial where he actually comes fully back into play, even though it's clear as all day he's gonna play a role in the story. The game doesn't even try to hide it. His face is on the save screen for this case. He's shown in the intro. It's pretty much hinted at high ad nauseum. Heck, Emma even does a thing where she convinces Clavier that she is Christoph, which scares Clavier. And speaking of wasted potential, apparently Clavier looks up to Christoph in a way, I guess, which does explain why he wanted to have that fair trial against his brother here and there. The problem is that, again, a lot of these details come out too little too late to the point where it just feels rushed in at the last moment. Manfred von Karma was a force to be reckoned with before you knew his involvement with DL6. You knew eventually he was involved. But even before that, you had enough to grip that he was a compelling villain. Heck, he could have actually not have been the villain, and he still would have been a compelling enough opponent for Turnabout Goodbyes. He's the guy who raised Miles Edgeworth, and god dang it, he's gonna show you why. Christoph feels like they're trying to do an evil defense attorney akin to him, but I'm sorry, even Godo did that job better. But I've already talked about that. Christoph is just, he's part of the reason why the stakes suck for this. What are the stakes involving Christoph? He'll be ousted about being the one behind forgery after he's already in jail for murder. I get he's got this whole reputation thing, but it really just comes off as unbelievably petty. Sure, Manfred von Karma was petty, but Manfred von Karma also had the thing that he wasn't, caught for it, and he obviously wanted to avoid being in jail. Christoph is already in jail. And again, it feels like a weaker version of Dahlia. Person who fools Phoenix into thinking they're friendly, eventually comes back as the main villain overall. But here's the thing, though. Dahlia had stakes herself. It was her last chance. She was literally a ghost who had to be spirit channeling here, so she did her darndest to make sure that she got her plans committed. Christoph is so lax here, and yeah, he acts all pompous and stuff. Then we bring up some interesting thing where maybe he's old-fashioned and has his own conservations about the law. Enjoy all that from his breakdown phase. And while his breakdown is awesome or whatnot, it just doesn't salvage him as a character. And thus, what we are left with is what feels like, yes, a victory, but a mild victory. Not completely a hollow victory, but god dang is a mild one, and that's not something you want for a finale case. Whew. That's mainly in depth. Okay, music. I like this one. It's definitely not my favorite. In fact, there are some tracks that I'm kind of bored by. I'm not really a fan of the interrogation themes. I love the pursuit theme. I like the tell the truth theme. I like a lot of the miscellaneous themes like Troop Grammary, the Waki Kataki theme. I like the remixes and whatnot. I like the suspension theme. This game definitely gets down the right themes for the right moods and whatnot. The sprite work, okay, back when this game first came out, the sprite work was a very keen evolution. It was them for the first time using technology strictly made for the DS, unless you count Rise from the Ashes, but that had to go alongside Ace Attorney 1, so yeah, it didn't show as much. Apologist definitely ramps up that sprite work here, and I will say this, the breakdowns when they show can be actually rather fun to look at. Shame the actual story couldn't suffice with that, but I digress. So yeah, the music is down, the sprite work is down. I just want to know before I end my thoughts, I am just curious as to who's responsible for all the details, because There's no way to pinpoint it. Shuichi Takumi isn't even credited as the main writer or director. Now, I still think he's definitely the main writer. Like, that much is probably obvious, what with Capcom holding Ghost Trick hostage at the time. But how much of this he screwed up is really beyond me. Did he just do the basic outline and people tried to do the inner stuff? It's a mystery. One thing we do know, though, is who the executive producer was who asked for all those executive mandates. KJ Inafune. Goodness gracious. So, I'll just cap this off by saying, Apollo Justice. It's a game. I can definitely get, you may have fun with it. It's just, I don't really come back to this game that often, and I really am saying why. It has so much good ideas. The execution just doesn't cut it. And that ends my thoughts.
Alright then, so that was Apollo Justice. That was certainly a game and a half. Luckily, we'll be on to better games next time, so we'll see you at some point in the future for Ace Attorney Investigations. Unfortunately, not recorded by me.
Well, it's not like you'd be able to do
Liz.
investigations too, because you need some emulator stuff
Yeah,
for that.
Also trying to control investigations on the iPhone is a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, that's when I am going to be using the controller.
Well, Dwibs, you can always use the Drastic emulator for Android.
Nah, I don't trust that.
Well, I can tell you that it works just flawlessly on my Shield, like I've showed in the stream. But anyway, see you, everybody.
See ya.
Ta-ta.
So yeah.